Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com. Today we're talking about first-gen TDI modifications. The long-awaited release, finally, of the first-generation Volkswagen diesel repair in the US is active and the information's out there, so now we can finally talk about what this repair is. We don't have to play the guessing game of adding urea injection, modifying them and shipping them to Mexico or China or crushing every single one of these cars. We can finally talk about these cars getting fixed and back on the road. I imagine there is going to be some percentage that are smushed, but they're probably, low value cars anyway. So all of those concerns of they're going to destroy every single one of them, they're going to ship them overseas, they're going to bury them 1,000 feet underground, or they're going to shoot them into space, can now be quenched. Generation 1 Volkswagen TDI common rails. What are we talking about? We're talking about 09 to 14 Jetta SportWagen, 09 to 14 Jetta, 10 to 14 Golf, 13 and 14 Beetle and Beetle convertible. So this is the biggest number of vehicles percentage-wise out of all of them. We've already done Gen 3, which is only model year 15. We've done Gen 2, which is 12, 13, 14 Passat only. And now we're going to get the big, massive number of them. This is going to bring a lot of cars into the dealership. And unfortunately, for the dealer techs, a lot of these are going to be modified near the holding facilities. Thanks for lying to us on that one very early on. And so they'll be modified there and then sent out into the market. And we'll talk about what that may mean in a little bit. So what's the repair going to be? Basically two versions of this, Criteria 1, Criteria 2. Criteria 1 is model year 09 only. And the reason that's a different criteria is the NOx catalyst, which is the main big component getting replaced, and the diesel particulate filter on that car are one piece. It's one giant long pipe basically out of the turbo all the way back to the exhaust flap, right? So it's a big piece. And since the main repair is replacing the NOx cat, well, on those that still have the one piece, they're going to be doing both. This is actually not a terrible thing because those DPFs were good about cracking anyway. So on Criteria 1, you got a DPF, you have a NOx catalytic converter, you have the exhaust flap right behind the NOx cat, a new oxygen sensor, a handful of bolts, a handful of heat shields, little knick-knacky parts like that, and then an EGR filter. This is what goes from the EGR on the backside into the DPF. This is the pipe that we would pull the hose off, swipe the finger in the DPF, and see if there were soot on it, and if there was soot, you had to replace the DPF. The NOx cat looks basically the same. It may be a different composition on the inside, but it essentially looks like the same exact part. The flap looks very different, as well as the EGR filter is completely different. This looked like a coffee can before with two pipes coming out of it. Now you can see it looks quite a bit different than that. It almost looks like it has a flex section in it. Also, the downstream or the rear O2 looks like it's been updated as well. Not terribly uncommon if we're changing a handful of things. And then the bolts and the heat shields, those are just accessories or ancillary parts to doing this job. If you have an 09 Criteria 1 car, this is about a 6-hour repair. Labor time pays 5.7, and you'll also get a software update. Software update is going to apply to both Criteria 1 and Criteria 2. Criteria 1 also, on very limited runs to the point where they're not even sending stock to the dealers, may require a glow plug module update, which is really interesting because there were a handful of cars early on, years and years ago, that had a glow plug module recall, or it may not have been a full recall, it may have just been a circular where you were never notified, but if you went to the dealer and they ran your VIN, it would come up that way. I don't remember if it was a notifiable recall or if it was just an update, required vehicle update, that only was found out when you brought your car to the dealership. When we move to Criteria 2, very similar repair. The only thing we don't do is we don't do a DPF at all, and we don't do anything with the glow plug module. I assume these are all updated for production for 2010 forward, where we split the DPF and the NOx cat, which is a really good idea. We split those two so you don't have to worry about DPF replacement. And then the glow plug module has already been updated or is completely different altogether, so there's no worry about that. Still gets software, still gets the NOx cat, still gets the flap behind the NOx cap, the O2 sensor as well. So there's two different times. There's 2.9 hours for Beetle convertibles. They have a couple more things and a bigger belly pan. And 2.7 for the majority of the cars. So this is not the giant repair that, you know, a lot of people were thinking it was going to be to get these cars compliant. What level of compliancy does this actually meet? I don't know, but it got approved. So there should be no reason why these cars aren't going to be 50 state legal going forward based on the standards of which they were built on and then modified, moved forward. For you owners, what are you going to see? You're probably not going to see a lot of difference. Just like the other two generations, they give a small range of about 2 miles per gallon decrease in fuel economy. If you are a MPG aficionado, this may influence your life in some way. For the majority of us that would drive these cars, or the people that do have these cars, you're never going to see a noticeable difference, right? You might see a little bit of a decrease, but you very well might not. 2 miles per gallon average, you know, on a trip is the difference between being in a rush to get to work and taking your time to get to work. It's not that significant. So if I owned one of these, I wouldn't be real torqued up about the number of miles per gallon possibly, right? Not even guaranteed, possibly decrease. I'd be more happy that now I was worried I was going to have this AdBlue system added onto my car and saw massive horsepower drops. I'd be happier that I didn't have to worry about that. I'd also be happy that I was getting a big fat restitution check because now my car can finally get done. You know, this has all been going on for damn near 2 years. 2 years this has almost been going on. So it's so good to see the final chapter, you know, starting on getting this taken care of and these cars getting modified. I shouldn't say the final chapter because there still is TORAG that needs to be addressed, but that's such a small number that I'm not as worried. Plus, I really hope that gets addressed soon because I really want one of those diesel TORAGs. They're so nice and an amazing SUV. A couple of concerns I do have on the 09s where you're doing DPF, pays to drop the subframe out. I worry that guys are just going to be smashing that heat shield to rip the DPF out. So if you're a tech, take a little care with your customers. Almost, 10-year-old car now. Don't smash the heat shields up, right? That should go without saying. And the other thing is really kind of the one I'm not an expert on, right? I'm not an economics expert, but I'm more interested into seeing what happens, is that how the market reacts. You know, the 15s were a low number, so there was a scarcity. The Passats were pretty low number, and those are just kind of there existing. The 9 through 14 models, that's most of them. That's a ton of cars. So it's going to be interesting to see how dealers are buying back the cars they took in from the buyback, how independent shops are going to be buying these cars, or I should say independent dealers are going to be buying these cars at auction post-modification, and what the market's going to look like. To me, it feels like there's going to be a huge saturation of these cars in the market. Now, maybe because of the time that it's going to take to make all these modifications, maybe it won't be like the modification started today, which it did, and tomorrow there's going to be 300,000 of these cars on the lot, right? That's not going to happen. So perhaps to overcome that, they're going to stagger out some of these modifications on the cars that are not owned by customers, and perhaps that'll allow the market to not be completely saturated with these cars. The campaign did say retail customers only, so I don't know if this is going to include all those ones held in storage. I assume, right? I assume the modification will be the same, but perhaps the timing of it will be a little bit different. So for those of you that were worried and waited to decide buyback or not, now you know. Now you know exactly what your car is going to get. If I were going to do this modification, I probably wouldn't be first in line. I would let someone else test drive what it really does to the car, how it influences horsepower, drivability, fuel economy, before I was standing in line in order to get the modification. That being said, you know, you're also waiting on getting money. So the faster you do it, the sooner you'll get restitution money that VW promised you. So finally, we have information to talk about. Finally, we can know instead of guessing and assuming and hearing rumors. I heard so many rumors from internet, from magazine, from news articles, from VW community, from VW employees, and so much of that information was so wrong. They didn't have anything to back it up with, even though they spoke on it like they did. And that's incredibly insidious to the community because you're creating this weird panic and misinformation, and it drives me nuts. That's why for most of this time, until I had information, you guys heard me say, I don't know, we gotta wait and see. I know it sucks, hold tight. As soon as I know, I'll tell you. So now I know, now I'm telling you. If you guys have any questions or comments, you know what to do. Hey, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with anybody you know in the diesel world. If you want exclusive content, discounts to places like Kerma TDI, get a discount from them, Black Forest, Eurowise, Sonic Tools, S&P Automotive, MT Knives, and more. Check out Crew Membership Program, link down in the description. A great way to help support the show and score yourself some really rad discounts, as well as if you want to support the Patreon or use my Amazon link. Those are both down in the description too. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, Snaps Chat. All right, guys, hey, thanks so much for watching. Good luck to all you TDI customers out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.